Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news and real answers, but we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us, speak up, stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers, but we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us, speak up, stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Bob Scott and Jim Waters.
Hello, Kentuckiana. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. You're listening to us probably on 970 AM right now, although we are also live streaming this on the Kentucky's Voice Facebook and YouTube channels. If you want to actually see a visual companion to what you're hearing over your radio. If you want to catch this later today, you can. I believe it's at 12:30, at 4 p.m., and at 8 p.m. Tune in to Channel 21 on Spectrum TV. And then we will post archive video to YouTube also. So I recommend that you go to that YouTube channel, search for Kentucky's Voice on YouTube, and just like and subscribe the channel. That way, when you got a few extra hours, you can click on some of the old videos and just this one. They're usually up in about 1 day's time. So we hope you enjoy this this podcast. We're having some technical issues on one of our guests, but we're going to be joined hopefully by two representatives, one in the House and one in the Senate. Savannah Maddox, who is a representative from Grant County in northern Kentucky, and we have a state senator from Shelby County by the name of Aaron Reed. He's been a guest on this program with other hosts a couple times in the past, so you're probably familiar. We have an exciting show today. We're going to talk about some current issues. We're also going to talk about what's been happening in the state legislature. I do want to remind our listeners that we are listener supported, so all of our funding comes from donations and a little bit of advertising as well. So if you've got an advertising idea or you want to give to the program to keep conservative voices on Louisville radio, I know if you're a listener to this program, you know how important it is that we have a conservative voice in a city that's majority Democrat. If you want to give, the best way to do that is either to go to the website kyvoice.org. That's kyvoice.org. You'll find on there not only some links to all of the different options on how you can view this programming or listen to it, but you'll also find a donate button on there. We would appreciate anything that you could give. You can also text us. You can text the number 53555 and just text the phrase KY Voice. That will allow you to text in, or you can text GIVE, and we will pop up a link there. You can also use the longer number that you're probably more familiar with, and that's 502-571-0970. That's 502-571-0970. All right. So what are some of the topics that we're going to talk about over the next 4 segments of the show? We're going to talk about what bills have passed in January. The General Assembly is a long session this year. That means they're meeting for as many as 60 days. They kind of had some weather issues, so they'll probably hit 59 or 58 this year. But they go all the way through the middle of April, and they started that first full week in January. So they've been going for a full month. We're going to get a little recap on some of the bills that have come through over that time. Hopefully we get Savannah to join us, but Aaron Reed has filed some legislation, as well as Savannah has, on each side that will deal with the driver's license issue. So there's 2 conflicting bills that are somewhat similar, and there are some differences that I hope we're able to talk over. If you've had to renew your license in the last year, you know what a hassle that has been. and our state legislature is hoping to do something about this time. Both Aaron Reed and Savannah Maddox are probably the two biggest gun champions in our legislature, so we'll talk about some alterations that they want to Kentucky's gun regulations. And in the final segment, we'll get some talk about some new bills that might be proposed over the next month or two, and where we think that the legislature is going to go from here. Please join us after the break. We have an exciting show up ahead.
Radio online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. In this segment, we're going to be joined by two state representatives, a House representative named Savannah Maddox, and a state senator named Aaron Reed. So let me just bring both of those on if we can get both. And let me just have you introduce yourself. Let's start with Savannah. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been in the legislature, and what issues are you really a champion of?
Yes, I was first elected in 2018, first sworn into office in 2019, and I have been an avid supporter and defender of our Second Amendment rights, as well as a myriad of our constitutional rights and liberties. And really my main focus has been to restore the appropriate role of government, which is a limited government, as our founders intended.
All right, perfect. And Aaron, I know some of our listeners have heard you on with other hosts like Bob Scott, but can you do a little introduction of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a retired Navy SEAL, did 22 and a half years, and, turned the chapter in service to running as a senator at District 7. So I represent Henry County, Shelby, and Anderson counties, as well as a little bit of Jefferson County into J-Town. And I'm just finished my 13th month as an elected official, looking to really get after it on my second go around here, the second year, preserving the Constitution as much as possible. I'm all about order, accountability, and constitutional government.
All right. That's a great intro. So the General Assembly started meeting at the beginning of January. In basically a little under a month's worth time, there have been, I believe, 529 House bills. There have been 183 Senate bills filed at this point. I think they have already gotten 21 bills out of the House, 19 bills out of the Senate, so they haven't been biding their time, even though they missed a day or two there for weather. So let me allow our two speakers to just give a broad overview. What are some of the most interesting things that have happened during January? On my particular segments on Kentucky Voice, we haven't talked a lot about legislation quite yet. So just of those 19 bills that have passed the Senate, or those 21 bills that have passed the House, can you just give me give our listeners a little bit of a summary of what are some of the highlights or lowlights, if you want to emphasize that? Let's start with Savannah.
Sure. I mean, obviously, to me, one of the most important bills that we've passed out of the House is House Bill 312, which is an update to constitutional carry. We passed, I filed that and was able to pass it in 2019 to allow citizens, it expanded their Second Amendment rights and kind of removed some of those restrictions that had been in place prior. So what we did is we went back and we updated that for 18 to 20-year-olds and made it to where they currently, under law, don't have the ability to concealed carry, even though they can possess and carry a firearm openly. They couldn't carry it concealed like every other law-abiding adult has the ability to do. So House Bill 312 would allow them to do that. But we tied it to the CCDW statute. So by allowing them to go through that program and obtain a permit, they have the ability to carry a concealed firearm. So to me, that's a huge thing that's passed out of the House. This is the earliest that I can remember within a legislative session ever passing a Second Amendment bill. And it is now in the capable and ready hands of Senator Aaron Reed to usher it through the Senate. So we're excited about that.
Okay, let's just hop right into that. Aaron, Can you tell me a little bit, because you had filed, I think the last year you filed a bill that's somewhat similar to this. Can you just basically talk a little bit about the nuances? What's the differences between that bill and what do you think is going to actually get through this time?
Well, I passed Senate Bill 75 last session. And Senate Bill 75 was basically what Savannah had been speaking about earlier. It's allowing 18 to 20-year-old adults to carry a firearm, which they can already carry, open carry. But what Senate Bill 75 was going to do was just to cover it up. Throw your jacket over it and roll a little bit more conspicuous or inconspicuous so that you're not drawing attention to yourselves. And to me, the big issue was that, women aren't going to carry open carry. Young women just don't, they don't feel comfortable as a whole, traveling to the grocery store looking like John Wayne. So, this was a thing I think would help ladies out more so. However, with the new bill, House Bill 312, it goes a little step closer because one thing is that, after I passed it in the Senate, it went over to the House, and our big hurdles was a lot of House members wanted there to be some type of training involved, something to give them a little bit more warm and fuzzy that these 18 to 20-year-old young adults had a little more responsibility. So, with this new bill, the provisional permit, stop me if I say anything wrong, Savannah, but the provisional permit, the way I understand it, is for 18 to 20-year-olds. And the reasons why it's different is because of reciprocity issues. If they were just simply going to allow 18 to 20-year-olds to carry and get a permit under the current law, then we would have a little bit of issue with reciprocity in other states. So I understand this provisional permit will allow them to carry in Kentucky and maybe a couple other states that have the same rule. But this would also check some of that training issue that will have to go through what has gone in the past with earning or with, going through the training of getting a concealed carry permit.
Right. So
there's some training involved, and, that will allow the folks on the, in the middle, so to speak, to have a little warm and fuzzy on and knowing that these 18 and 20-year-old young adults would possibly have a little bit more training and legal advice. Because that's really the biggest part about going through a concealed carry permit class.
Right. So just to kind of hammer down what these differences are, if Savannah's version of the bill were to pass as is, the 18 through 20-year-olds in the state of Kentucky would have a new right, and that would be the ability to conceal carry. Right now, they, like every other Kentuckian who aren't a felon and et cetera, there's a couple of restrictions, but like people that are 21 and up would be able to open carry, but this would add the ability to conceal carry. But for those 18 through 20-year-olds, there would be an added training requirement. They would have to do some sort of training in order to exercise what I consider a constitutional right. Am I summarizing that right, Savannah?
Yeah, so essentially, Lance, I have filed this legislation ever since we passed constitutional carry, and I have filed it without any type of training.
Right.
And for years, it has not moved an inch. Last year, Senator Reed was able to get the same bill that I filed for years and years out of the Senate And it came over to the House, and what we realized, and this has become abundantly clear after having passed House Bill 12,
Right.
that it cannot pass the House without the provisional permit process because of the reciprocity issue, but two, simply the political will to pass that bill
Right.
without the training. So the distinction is that, if that bill is able to pass clean in the Senate without any amendments, the House can concur. If it doesn't, the House will not concur, and that's just as plain as can be. But the bottom line is, in my opinion, we didn't create a new right. That right has always been there. It's our constitutional right, our God-given right, frankly, to keep and bear arms. But what we did is we struck the ban that had been on concealed carry for 18 to 20-year-olds. And we've got to keep moving forward on this issue, get it passed out of the Senate. And there are a myriad of other things that we could do in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to expand the ability of law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights. We can't fall asleep at the wheel on that.
Right. Is it fair to say, Savannah, that you think this is a step forward, but maybe not the final step? Like, ideally, we would not have that training requirement if possible, but this is a step forward. I think Aaron agrees it's a step forward, but ideally we go ahead and you don't need any sort of permit in order to exercise a constitutional right. Is that the way you see it?
I absolutely see it a step forward. And the way I look at it currently, right now, 18 through 20-year-olds do not have the ability to concealed carry. And like Senator Reed said, that's an issue for someone that is, not comfortable open carrying, such as myself. I'm 5'2". I would not feel comfortable, although it is your constitutional right to do so, and I will defend that. I would not feel comfortable open carrying because it makes it so much easier for someone to apprehend me, take that firearm out from underneath, or off of me and use it against me. So
Right.
I'm 100% wanting concealed carry for those law-abiding 18 to 20-year-olds.
Right. Okay. And just coming back to Aaron, I'm sure you'll probably try to push a little bit on this and make sure that basically there's an understanding among the legislature that having a requirement for training for 18 through 20-year-olds does not lead to mandatory training for anyone else. Now, no one, and I think you agree with this, no one is opposed to training. It's if you're going to carry a firearm, you should know how to use it, but that should not be a legal requirement. It's a recommendation, not a requirement. Is that the way you see it, Aaron?
It doesn't say in the Constitution that you need to be trained to enjoy your constitutional. However, this is a step in the right direction, and I fully support it. And Savannah's been tipping the spear on getting gun rights back to Kentuckians for years. And we're going to keep on moving forward as a team.
Okay, join us right after the break. We'll talk about more gun issues.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's voice is calling on bold citizen
can you see me?
journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Okay, we can briefly talk. I could barely.
kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. I am joined today with two honored guests, one in the Kentucky House and one in the Kentucky Senate. That's Savannah Maddox, who is a representative from Northern Kentucky, kind of Grant County, I think is where she's from. And then Aaron Reed, who is in Shelby County and he has been on the program a couple times before. So we got into gun legislation in the last segment, and I want to talk about a very hot topic still as it relates to constitutional rights and guns, and that is the shooting that occurred last weekend. I guess it was on a Friday, last Friday, not the Friday 3 days ago, but the week before. The shooting of an ICU nurse named Alex Pretty, who worked in a VA hospital. As you probably know, there are all kinds of ICE protests going on in various cities, but none more intense than in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now. A huge part of the reason that it's so intense there is because of the local politicians who have only been egging on the protesters. And that's Tim Walz, the governor, who was the vice presidential candidate with Kamala Harris, and then Jacob Frey, who was the mayor of Minneapolis, both quite liberal. Nevertheless, ICE has been doing raids on various criminals that are illegal aliens and are going to be deported if they are captured. And right now they are focusing, I think there are 3,000 ICE agents in the city of Minneapolis or the surrounding areas that are trying to deport criminal illegal aliens. All right, Alex Pretty he had made it his mission in life, at least for the last month or two, to participate in those protests, also to observe. While I don't necessarily agree with his perspective, I do respect his right to protest. A video came out of a previous instance in which he was interacting with ICE officials, in which he was yelling, cursing at various law enforcement officers. He kicked the vehicle of a officer, and then he destroyed the rear taillight of an officer before he was pushed to the ground, and then ultimately turned loose because local law enforcement has not been assisting to a great extent in taking care of some of those minor criminal offenses that are happening around these protests. Over the 11 days between that incident and the one that led to his shooting and eventual death, Alex Pretty basically continued to engage in these protests. He was filming ICE officers. He was participating with other people who were using rape whistles in order to distract the officers and alert illegal aliens that ICE was patrolling the area. But generally, he was engaging in nonviolent observation of what ICE was doing. When ICE basically engaged one of the protesters who was blowing a rape whistle at the ICE officers, the ICE officer pushed that lady to the ground, to a snowbank that was nearby, and Alex Pretty stepped between the officer and this woman, ostensibly to help her up. It happens that Alex Pretty was concealed carrying at the time. The ICE officers attempted to bear spray him, to basically pepper spray him in order to get him out of the engagement. They got into a wrestling match. During that wrestling match, with about 5 ICE officers trying to subdue Alex Pretty, one of the officers was able to take away his concealed weapon, which he did not draw. He did not brandish it, is another way of saying that. The ICE officer took it away. Someone apparently errantly fired a gun during this altercation, and then all of the ICE officers basically fired at Alex Pretty, and he got shot, I believe, 9 times. Now, ultimately, what we're going to talk about in this segment is your constitutional right to protest and to conceal carry while protesting. And And so let me just play a couple of clips of Trump administration's officials talking about this incident. So first is Kash Patel and then Scott Bessent.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country, in these protests turning into violent scenarios and people attacking law enforcement. That's when you go over the line, and that's when law enforcement steps in.
That this chaos that's going out there. And again, I am sorry that this gentleman is dead, but he did bring a 9mm semi-automatic weapon with 2 cartridges to what was supposed to be a peaceful protest. I think that there are a lot of paid agitators who are ginning things up, and the governor has not done a good job at tamping this down.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, he was an ICU nurse, worked for the Veterans Administration, and there's no evidence that he brandished the gun whatsoever. In fact, it appears that he was disarmed before
he brought a gun.
Now, some other officials like Kristi Noem, I give her a little bit more grace than these two. Those comments were 2 days after this shooting incident, when more video had coming out. Kristi Noem gave a press conference where she made some, I believe, errant statements, but that was, kind of in the heat of the moment, before all the facts had come out. But I want to go to President Trump saying very similar things to what you just heard.
Do you agree with the assessment from some of your own officials that Alex Preddy is a domestic terrorist or an assassin?
Well, I haven't heard that, but certainly he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. But hey, look, bottom line, everybody in this room, we view that as a very unfortunate incident, okay? Right. Everyone, right. Unless you're a stupid person. Very, very unfortunate incident. I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff. And despite that, I say that's a very unfortunate incident.
All right. Now, we're a conservative radio show, and generally we mostly support the Trump administration, and especially when it relates to immigration policy. But I do not personally agree with much of what was said in those 2 statements about what your constitutional rights are. So I want to throw it to Aaron. Maybe I'm off on this. Maybe they're off. What are your thoughts on this? You're a very decorated Navy SEAL. You are very close to law enforcement, file a lot of law enforcement legislation. What, in your estimation, is a person's constitutional right as it relates to being able to participate in protests, even when a person is armed?
Well, thanks, Doc. I'm always going to lean on the side of the citizens and their right to, keep and bear arms. There should be no restrictions like, what we see here. Some people would argue that the common sense bat wasn't swung very hard by showing up and then getting in an altercation with police while armed, which, being armed is not, you can do that. You should be able to do that. You should be able to go anywhere and not be unarmed and rely on someone else to take care of you. I personally can't stand it when I go to, events, ball games, concerts, and things like that nature, where I have to go through a metal detector and give up my right to carry, because I don't trust that the other, the paid staff there is, really going to be sufficient in every way. So, I'm all about being able to carry. I think the knee-jerk reaction to, things like what the president replied and other elected officials, they kind of got caught up on it. But bottom line is, conservatives believe in justice,
right.
Not mob judgment. So, I want to see all the facts come out and all the reasoning.
That's right. A thorough investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Independent investigations are, especially in this situation.
Okay. We're coming up to the end of the segment, but I'm going to allow, after the break, Savannah Maddox to weigh in. She's one of the strongest champions of constitutional rights and gun rights in our state legislature. And I think our listeners would be well served to listen to what her comments are on this. Join us back after the break, and we'll talk also about driver's licenses. Yeah, sorry, I rambled a little bit in my explanation, and that cut some time, but we'll.
Online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I want to continue that conversation. In the last segment, we talked about the Alex Preddy shooting, which is obviously, it's tragic when anyone dies, especially I think it's pretty clear from the video that we see that he was not actually attacking law enforcement. Although, again, as Aaron Reed said, a little common sense would have gone a long way, and you don't want to be perceived as being a threat to those law enforcement officers when you're having a physical altercation and there's chaos going on. Savannah Maddox, I want to bring you back on. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sure you watched all of the video that you could, and you saw those commentaries from Trump administration officials. What's your estimation of the situation and the constitutional rights that they weighed in on?
Well, first of all, I'm glad to hear that Senator Rand Paul is calling for an investigation into this incident, and I'm glad that the Trump administration is now looking into investigating it. I was very alarmed by the commentary that came from the Trump administration, remarks that indicated that this individual didn't have the rights to possess and carry a firearm, that he had too many cartridges with him, too many magazines, things of that nature. It's bothers me whenever I hear any type of anti-Second Amendment discussion happening from Republican administrations. And, I feel like it's my responsibility as a state lawmaker to speak up, because I want citizens to know that they have a constitutional, God-given, really, rights to defend themselves and their families, the right to keep and bear arms, that's our Second Amendment, anywhere that they are statutorily permitted to do so. And as best as we can tell, this individual was acting within the confines of the law whenever he was carrying that firearm.
Right. Okay. Obviously, everyone on this phone call, and I think most people that have watched the video, regards it as a tragedy. I think it's hard to assign much blame to the officers as well. It's a chaotic situation. You're not sure whether he has a gun, whether he doesn't, who shot. So we'll see what the investigation turns up, but I will not be surprised if they are found to have engaged in a justified shooting. So it's tragic that this, I call it an accident, that this accident occurred, but it should not reflect what most people who conceal carry to a protest do, nor your rights. And so I couldn't agree more with both of our speakers on that.
It's
now,
a very dangerous game,
yep.
that's for sure.
Transitioning into It's a very serious topic whenever anyone dies. So transitioning into a less serious case, but something that people are very passionate about as well, is inefficiency of government as it relates to their driver's license renewal or obtaining a real ID or obtaining their own license for the first time or a learner's permit. So what's the situation that's gone on? If you tried to renew your license this summer, you probably saw what I could only describe as complete chaos. When I used to go to get my driver's license renewed, I would just walk into the county clerk's office. There usually was no line whatsoever, or maybe one person. They snap your photo, you check off 3 or 4 boxes, and you're in and out in 20 minutes with like a $20 fee. All right. That was the way that it used to operate. Now, this past summer, you had to schedule an appointment at a regional license office. Often you were not able to get an appointment within 3 months. So it was a 3-month wait to even get this appointment. When you got there, there was gigantic lines where you were there for multiple hours. They weren't open on various days during the week. You now have to have a vision test, and there were also some 15-year-olds that were trying to get their learner's permit that were in the line, pushing you back in the line. So, Savannah, you filed a bill to basically address this situation. Can you just update our listeners, basically, what was the system before, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, before we switched to these regional license offices? Who handled all the licenses in our 120 counties? And why did we switch? And what was really causing all of this chaos and all the lines that have lessened, but they're still around today? So go ahead and just give the background.
Sure. So 35 regional offices is not enough. Like that, we know that, we can understand that, to serve 120 counties. That's why we have this issue. But going back to 2019, how this all happened, whenever Real ID came about, initially the Commonwealth of Kentucky resisted it. Former Governor Matt Bevins said, we're not going to do it. He held the line on that for a while. And then eventually the legislature, prior to me being elected, they adopted the Real ID. So at that point, the Circuit Clerks Association, they voted unanimously to stop continuing issuing these driver's licenses because they didn't feel like they had the ability to issue the Real ID, right? So long story short, the legislature takes that process from the circuit clerks and puts it into this regional office model. And you have these, huge 3-month-long waits, and people who do get an appointment, they have to stand in line all day, take off work, sometimes travel 2 or 3 hours or more to even get to a regional office. And it's an absolute disaster. Add the vision test on top of that. I voted no on that, by the way. But anyway, add that in on back in 2020, and you've just got this disaster. So, but what we have to remember is that for 88 years, our circuit clerk successfully administered the driver's license program, which is why I had filed the bill the way I did. They still don't want it back, make no mistake. But what has changed is whenever the legislature first created this regional office model, it was thought that these Real IDs were going to be issued and printed at the point of service. That's not what's happening. All these regional offices are doing is verifying your documents, collecting that data, and sending it off to a third-party issuer. Mm-hmm. Our circuit clerks could do that, or any of the other offices that Senator Aaron Reed has in his bill, Senate Bill 7. So, and I'm sure that he will elaborate on that. Doesn't need me to, but the bottom line is we cannot walk away from this problem and not do something. And I think that I speak for all of us, he and I, and also Representative Rebecca Raymer in the House, and Senator Lindsey Tishner in the Senate. We want to fix this problem.
Yeah. Now, just very quickly to help our listeners understand, your bill would close the regional offices and reinstall the old system, basically, where every county has their own county court clerk, which they have right now anyway. Those offices still exist. but you would just return all of those services, including the real ID, to each of the 120 counties. Is that right?
Yes, the circuit clerks would do what the regional offices are doing right now. They would take in those documents, scan them, and send them off to the transportation cabinet, and the IDs would be issued the way that they're being now, through a third party mailed to your house.
Yep.
So that's what they would do. I mean, obviously the circuit clerks are no more amenable to this than they were in 2019 whenever they voted to get rid of it. They don't want it back, but we have to come up with a system that works here.
Yep. Well, I know if I'm not taking a pay cut, I would rather have less work. So I don't know if that's exactly what's going on, but that might be part of it.
They did not receive a pay cut that I'm aware of, and are
exactly.
operating on the same budget.
Yeah. All right, Aaron, you filed Senate Bill 7, which is priority legislation. It basically got fast-tracked right through the Senate. It's already out of the Senate. It addresses the situation in a slightly different way. Can you just kind of highlight what the difference is from returning it straight to the old system? How is this different than that?
Well, as Representative Maddox went over, Senate, her House bill has, it's been tough. She's had brick walls that she's been running into in the House because the appetite to go any farther with this has been pretty low. So what I did is I basically took lessons learned, and I actually brought in as many of the stakeholders as I possibly could and figured out what we could do to get everyone from being a thumbs down, the county clerks, circuit clerks, anyone involved, just up to a neutral. Because if I didn't get them to a neutral, it was going to be knives in the back, and they were going to call every senator that they knew and tell them this is horrible. So what we came up with is it's not mandatory. It's going to be an option for circuit clerks, county clerks, sheriffs, and county judge executives to possibly bring this into their office. One of the biggest things that people did not like, and I can understand why, is the $25 convenience fee that goes on that. And the problem with that is we really have a hard time passing anything that it's a non-funded mandate. Right. So again, this is optional. They don't have to take it. However, if they do, there will be some income coming in with a $25 convenience fee. I've had people tell me I'd pay $100 not to have to drive 2 or 3 hours away, and I get it. But there are some amendments coming, I believe, in the House on Senate Bill 7, and some of the things I would actually welcome. We can change up some wording on some things, but we can also, there's options for interlocal agreements between different counties. A lot of people across the state, a lot of other legislators that are against this, they don't think that every county should have a driver's license option because some of the counties are really small. Right. And honestly, $25 convenience fee isn't enough for smaller counties to hire another person to operate. So an interlocal agreement may be the better option for smaller counties. So it's really a fairly simple bill, but the important thing to remember is it's optional at almost every level. Yeah. And if you don't want to pay the $25 convenience fee, you can do it online, or you can, the idea is that this bill, Senate Bill 7, will relieve the pressure at the regional offices that they, the pressure they have now. So in theory, you should be able to walk right in and get your driver's license. And also, the counties will only be doing renewals, which should be the majority of the business that they're doing. I've had to drive my kids to Moorhead from Shelby County, twice. So I get it. The pressure is real. The problem is real. And, it's something Kentucky wants.
Okay. So it sounds like you're open to some negotiations on some of the details there. Just very quickly, yes or no, is this going to keep all of the regional offices as well? Are those going to stay?
In Senate Bill 7, correct. It will keep them open.
Okay. Join us after the break. We'll pick this up.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Okay. And Aaron, did you say that
at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. I want to very quickly go over where you can see the podcast for this. We're currently live streaming it on the Kentucky's Voice Facebook and YouTube pages. You just search for Kentucky's Voice at either YouTube or on Facebook, and you should be able to see that stream. We also archive the video on YouTube if you want to see past episodes. If you want to watch this on TV, you can do that at 12:30, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. today on Channel 21 if you have Spectrum. If you want to give to this show, you can either text GIVE to 502-571-0970, or you can go to the website kyvoice.org, kyvoice.org, and it'll have links to all of those outlets, as well as the ability to click on a donate button and figure out if you would like to support conservative radio in the Louisville area, which we desperately need. Okay. Just to put a little bit of a seal on our discussion of driver's license from the last segment, Savannah has a bill. I think Lindsey Tishner may have filed a bill again this time. Aaron Reed's bill has already gotten out of the Senate in order to try to fix the driver's license the driver's license system. The one thing that we know won't work is doing nothing. That's what Andy Beshear has proposed. Here's his quotes on what we should do about the driver's license. My commitment is to make it work. I mean, if we send it back to the clerks now, you have to rebuild from scratch there, and it might be another 5 years of challenges. I don't know what job takes 5 years in order to train for, but giving people driver's licenses or renewing their existing driver's licenses is not one of those jobs that requires 5 years of training.
Sounds like liberal logic.
Exactly. Yep. It's liberal excuse making. He just basically thinks that he owns the current system, and if he wants to own it, that's fine. I think the legislature is going to try to do something. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but there will be negotiations.
If Beshear wants to own that issue, then he needs to own up to the fact that people were allegedly given licenses under the table in exchange for bribe money. What's
Absolutely.
that about? So I think we need to really focus on that as well.
Absolutely. Okay, this last segment, we got about 10 minutes in this last segment. I want to basically open the floor for either Savannah or Aaron to just talk about what other legislation that we haven't talked about here. You could talk about your own bills, or you can talk about some other bills that you expect to float to the top. What are some other good ideas that maybe some of your colleagues have talked to you about that you were really supportive of? Let's start with Savannah. She's already on screen. What are some other pieces of legislation over the next couple months that you could see coming out of the House that you were really supportive of, or maybe something you really hate and you want to throw somebody under the bus?
So I think that the most important thing that we can be talking about in a 60-day session is our budget. And I have felt the winds of change. It's kind of hard to describe, but there is a new sentiment, I feel like, in Frankfurt that the emphasis has been on cutting spending, because the reality of it is we do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And I feel like the House in particular, because of course the budget originates in the House and goes over to the Senate for changes, but I feel like my colleagues in the House have really been serious about tightening our proverbial belt in this budget and cutting some of the spending. I think that there are going to be a lot of stakeholders and a lot of groups that are wondering where their appropriations are and are going to really have to come to the table and justify that spending, especially the executive branch. You know, those cabinets are going to have to be accountable and really explain why it is that they need this money, because for far too long there has been a taxpayer-funded trough from which all of these entities have feasted in every biennial budget. And I think that now is a great time for us to put our foot down and say, no, this is money that is being taken out of the pockets of our taxpayers. And we certainly know that they're going to do a better job of spending their money than the government is. So there's going to have to be a lot of austere cuts and intense justification to continue some of these programs.
Cuts in government spending is music to my ears. I'm sure it's a music to Aaron's as well. What we have to do, however, is take this House budget and fight for it and not let the Senate add in a lot of pork. You got any comment on that, Aaron? Feel free to talk about any other bills that you find interesting or ones that you want to promote too. We'll come back to Savannah at the end too.
Well, as a wise man once said, taxes are the symptoms, spending is the disease.
That's right.
You know, and I think we all agree with that one. But I've got several bills, filed and unfiled, that I still have to do. And, you know, we have this, we're trying to, in the Senate, trying to keep our bills around 5. But that
for
is
each person. Yeah.
Really tough because, you know, it's more of a gentleman's agreement. You know, I've got one on the state police, Kentucky State Police. There's a program called Trooper R, basically retired troopers. And currently they can come back after you retire from the state police within a 5-year window. And I'm basically extending that window out from the last day that they work, if they work as a trooper or, because sometimes you can retire, you know, if you're 20 years old or 21 years old, you know what, that's 41 when you retire, and you got a lot of career left in you. It really helps out the state, you know, by bringing guys back who are qualified, and the state police really like it. You know, there's one bill that could be a little controversial that I haven't filed yet, and it's kind of a little bit of humor here too. It's the left lane slowpoke bill, also known as the tax on Ohio drivers driving in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You know, I'm guessing Savannah might, coming from the north there, coming from Grant County, is probably ran into some slowpokes, and hopefully she's got her plates on there to help her get by and get to session on time there. But I too, I hear it all the time. You know, folks, you know, you got to do something about these people driving in the left lane. And I got the idea. Louisiana, they passed this same bill last session with only 3 no votes from their whole General Assembly. So, you know, I haven't filed it yet. I'm kind of waiting. I've got lots of co-sponsors who also think it should have been Senate Bill 1. So it's kind of funny. I've got some education bills. You know, I'm on the education committee, and you know, one of my things is the school-based decision makers. You know, I also believe that, you know, in the interest of the best and most efficient government is the one closest to the people. I believe that school boards who represent their people in their counties, in their districts, should have more power. And going back to 1990, the Kentucky Education Reform Act kind of neutered the school boards in a way that, you know, when the people elect a member of a school board, they expect them to be able to go in and work for the people and get things done that the people want. And that just really isn't the case anymore. They've been severely watered down. And one of the issues is the school-based decision makers. My bill would basically turn that into the school-based advisory council, giving the power more, putting leadership more on the principal, and the bottom line would, we would go to the school boards and the superintendent. Leadership has kind of been spread out like butter on a piece of toast in our education system. And I want the people to know who's in charge, who's leading, one, so that they'll know who's accountable for the education of their kids. And if there's issues, they need to know who to go talk to. And there's all kinds of issues with school boards where the people who elect them, they can't really talk to them and express their concerns, because currently a school board member is not really even allowed to dig into daily operations of any kind because of the way the law is written. So I think that's something that the public as a whole are going to be glad to see, because our education has been circling the drain for the past several years, and our scores reflect very poorly. I think leadership's a big deal, and I hope this brings it back.
All right. And I want to throw in another bill from the Senate in education. That's Lindsay Titchener's bill to get rid of DEI requirements in K through 12 education. You're a co-sponsor of that?
I'm a co-sponsor on that one, and I fully she'll have 100% of my support on pushing that one. Absolutely.
Let's get that through. All right, Savannah. What are some other bills that you're interested in, either your own or someone else? And I want to throw in, I think the second most important bills behind the budget is getting the ability to opt into that $1,700 tax credit that you can get for donating to organizations that supplement educational expenses K through 12. But go ahead.
Absolutely. We've talked about two of my priority bills, but I actually have another bill that I'm going to be filing. I haven't filed it yet, but it's something that I've worked on in the past, and it's very simple. Doesn't mean it'll be simple to pass, but it would require a fiscal impact statement for any bill that comes to the floor. We understand that there are tons, usually over 1,000 bills that are filed in the House. So it would not be prudent, necessary, or wise to require that there be a fiscal impact statement for every bill that is drafted, because as we know, many bills don't receive a committee hearing or they don't come to the House floor. But I think that if we are going to be voting on a bill on the House floor as a body, that we need to have an idea of how much it costs. And that way our friends over in the Senate have that information as well whenever they are contemplating passing a bill. So I think it's a very straightforward thing that will help us with our overall goal. We were talking about the budget earlier of reducing spending, is just having an idea, even if it's only a ballpark idea of how much a bill is going to cost before we put our names on it.
Right. I think that's just common sense. Another thing that relates to revenue that I think we should finally get accomplished this time is getting rid of the sales and use tax for churches that got put back into the law. I want to say about 4 years ago, they stuck that back in. Most people don't know, but if your church, your Catholic church is having a fish fry where they charge some amount of money, they are supposed to be paying sales tax. Now, the reality is, I know most of them don't, but the fact that we put this provision back into the law rather than taking it and keeping it out, we've basically made religious organizations into tax cheats somewhat inadvertently. So the amount of revenue that the state gets from this is almost negligible, and the power to tax is the power to destroy. And so we just should not have the government imposing taxes on religious organizations. Okay, we've only got about 30 seconds left. I do want to do a little bit of promotion. Next week, the Louisville Tea Party is going to be hosting a mayoral forum. We did invite Mayor Greenberg. He turned us down, but who knows in the future. But we will have 4 candidates. If you want to come to Roosters on Shelbyville Road, you'll be able to hear from 4 candidates for the Louisville's mayor's race, which is, if you're involved in local politics, probably the biggest one this year. Thank you for joining us on Kentucky's Voice. All right. You both were fantastic. Yeah, great job.